Have you ever met someone for the first time and you realize that you guys have a ton in common? And if you grew up together, you'd probably be a lot closer friends. I met Keith Eremea, Arkansas State Police, did 43 years, and we have a ton in common. He's a legendary interdiction guy. I'm nowhere close to that. I have aspirations to maybe one day be on a platform near him, but he's on another level. We have so much in common, and just his his stories that he remembers, the police work that he did. He was around before Tennessee versus Gardner took place, which, if you don't know, that's when, as law enforcement, if you're a fleeing felon, you could be shot just for that, not necessarily being armed or anything like that. So he came in way before, well, not way before that, a few years before Tennessee Gardner took place. So he remembers times in patrol that someone would be in a stolen car, they would jump out, and legally they were allowed to shoot them, which is crazy, just different times. And that was, less than 40, about 40 years ago, maybe a little bit more at this point. He is also a legendary interdiction officer. He was around when the Sovereign Citizens shot those two cops in West Memphis. He was around for the Iran-Contra affair with the airport that they were using in Arkansas. He has a great story about all of that stuff, and just a great leader. Loves proactivity, loves law enforcement, great American. His dad was one of the original pilots for FedEx, died in a plane crash, tragically. But man, this dude has lived a life that many of us could only imagine, and he's still going. He's still amazing. Still owns his own business, so now starting down that entrepreneur, or been down that road, but been doing really good for himself after he left law enforcement. Man, it was a great interview. I truly loved it. Hopefully you guys enjoy this. This is going to be another one of the interdiction mini series that we run periodically. This will be number 7 in that series, and my plan is to let it go January 1st, so you guys could all listen to it for the new year. Let me know what you think.
So you got to ask yourself, why do you want to do this? What keeps you motivated to stay proactive and get bad guys off the street?
The facts is a big cannon against a little tiny gun of opinions, because we've all heard people give us their opinions.
Let's talk about how easy it is to get narcotics in this country.
Once they're in this country, anywhere within 2 days, the drugs will be in our cities.
Because we know knowledge is power.
Well, today on Beyond the Barrel, we're going to have a special episode of the Interdiction again. We had 6 previously, and this will be the 7th one. I'm lucky enough to be in Arkansas with Eremea. See, I knew I was going to misspell that. But what a privilege and honor to have you here, and I'm grateful that you joined the podcast.
Thank you.
All right. So the podcast kind of, we talk a little bit about what takes place or what got you involved in law enforcement and your childhood and all that stuff. I like to give avenue of someone that may be looking at law enforcement in a perspective that they wanted that to be their career, or something maybe even like a criminal that thinks that all cops come from the same cloth. And I, over my years, I've realized that, there's a lot of cops that come from maybe a lineage of cops, and then there's some cops that come and their parents were criminals. So, so like, I think that outside of that uniform, we're just another person, and I would love to give people that perspective. That's ultimately my goal with the whole podcast.
Sure. I grew up in California first. My dad was a pilot at the Air Force Base in California. He started selling jets when he came out of the military, and sold a jet to Mr. and Mrs. Rockefeller in Arkansas. But the stipulation was he had to come back and be a pilot for him. My son's also a pilot, so the whole family's flying except me. And when Mr. Rockefeller, we came back here, he ran for governor. He won governor, and I started traveling with him quite a bit with my dad. We go to Virginia, other states, and of course the state troopers would escort the governor in other states. To me, it was just, I was amazed. They looked sharp. They were always friendly. I liked hanging out with them and stuff. And then Winthrop Rockefeller's son, Win, also wanted to be a state trooper, even though his dad said, you can't, you're a millionaire, and you'd get sued if you did something. So he didn't. But he ended up being state police commissioner for us before he died. And he was a great law enforcement friend. And he was the best man in my wedding. So there was a lot of that there, that everybody I was around loved police. The salary was not good. I started in 76 as a dispatcher after I got out of the Army for $4,000 a year.
Holy.
I started as a trooper in 79 for $9,000 a year. And we were working 6 days a week, 10 hours a day, and you were on call 4 hours after that. So, but I loved it, Kenny. And I'll just be honest with you. I had a great childhood. My mom was from France. I'd been to France several times. I got to fly around. I saw how the rich lived, no doubt. But one thing I'll say is, if they told me 5 years in, 10 years in, you'd have to take a pay cut to stay a state trooper, I'd have done it because I just loved the job.
Yeah.
I really did. And I stayed 43 and a half years.
It's a-
Yeah, it's a long time.
yeah, like this. I am 43 years old.
Wow.
Yeah. When you got into being a trooper, did you have aspirations, anything like specialty or anything along those lines?
You know, I really didn't know about interdiction. Got on in 79. I really was big into DWI enforcement and criminal arrest. I liked to catch the criminals that were local that I knew. And my old saying is, when you're catching the local criminals, it's kind of like you're picking up rocks and getting potato bugs and worms and stuff like that. When you're working interdiction, you're flipping that rock and there's a rattlesnake or a scorpion or something bad's going to get you. And I think it was just once I went to the pipeline school in 83 that the DEA put on, and Louisiana State Police came up and taught it. Once I was bit by that bug, I just couldn't get rid of it. I just loved it.
Who taught that class? Do you remember?
Butch Milam was a captain with the Louisiana State Police, and then gosh dang it, what's the boy's name? Smith, I think it was, that was blinded. He was a DWI guy, and he chased somebody down from roadblock, ran up to the car. The guy pulled a shotgun, shot him in the face, and blinded him. I can't believe I can't remember his name, but that guy lived a life that, I mean, he had so many tragedies. He later lost his wife because she divorced him. Here he is blind, no job. He ends up losing his daughter, who was 17 years old, going to a cheerleading camp, hit head on by a drunk driver, remarries, has a child. 10, 15 years later, I think it was, the boy ends up being involved in drugs and overdosed and was killed.
Wow.
And he was just, I mean, a phenomenal trooper.
And was he a Louisiana trooper?
Yes, sir, he was.
Okay.
Yep.
How did you get introduced to that pipeline? Did you see the class? And
No, I'd gotten about 15 pounds of marijuana in 83, about a week before. And that was a big thing back then.
yeah, for sure.
And we had a trooper who was up in Mena. And without getting into all the politics, we all know that a lot of cocaine was flown into Mena, Arkansas. That's when Oliver North and all of them were flying guns out and cocaine in. And this guy was
Contra affair, right?
That's correct. And this trooper came to me on his way to headquarters. He said, I heard you got about 15 pounds of marijuana. And I said, yeah. He said, I'll tell you what, you going to look for these guys? And I went, man, I'm going to start doing this. I think I got it. He said, well, there's going to be a pipeline school come up. And I was like, well, how do you know about this? He said, I've got some friends with DEA, IRS, and ATF. He said, I'll put the name in for you. I said, okay. So I kind of got involved in it there. And once I went to the pipeline school, I had John Scarborough, who was my partner. John later on was killed while working interdiction on Interstate 30, not far from where you taught that class. It was around the 106 mile marker. He had a subject in the car interviewing him, and a semi-rig driver said he was lighting a cigarette, drove off the shoulder and ran over the state police car. It killed John and injured the person he had stopped. But that was my original partner in interdiction.
You've had there's been a lot of tragedy. That's a lot of.
Yeah, let's see. I lost my FTO he was killed by gunfire. I had another FTO who committed suicide when he went into narcotics about 2 years later. My roommate was a city police officer. He was killed by gunfire. So yeah, I've had quite a few.
I feel like I don't want to say this and jinx it, but I feel like back in the day, there was a lot of death in law enforcement, especially gunfire. Like a lot more, I think, shootouts. I don't know, like if that makes sense, like shots being fired and stuff. I don't know. I did a podcast with Steve Murphy. So I did a podcast with him. He was a local cop before then. He said he was in more shootouts than he before he went to the DEA. I'm like, and he was in West Virginia, like the hills of West Virginia, and I'm like, wow, that's crazy.
Well, I think, and if you look at statistics, there was more police officers killed back then. Of course, we didn't have the vest. I started wearing a vest from 79. My mom bought it for me, $125. Our agency didn't start wearing vests till the late 80s. And of course, when you first wear a vest as a new trooper, it's like, what the hell are you afraid of? You're like, well, gunfire.
Yeah.
I'm not really worried about the boat with my name on it. I'm worried about the ones that say to whom it may concern.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
So it was just a different time. And like I told you before we sat down, when I first started as a trooper, we didn't have the Garner ruling yet, and we were allowed to shoot at fleeing felons. So if somebody jumped out of a stolen car, you shot.
Wow. That was common practice taught at academies and everything?
That was taught at academies.
Wow. That's very, I mean, you say it now and that was what, 30 years ago, 40 years ago?
40.
Yeah, you look at that now and it's like, holy cow. But I mean, it was just a different era, and that
It was.
Interesting. That's crazy. How did that change go over while you're being a cop?
You had different people that interpreted that law later. And of course, the state police at first were like, okay, we're still going to stick by the same procedures and policies. And we all know how long it takes to change a policy. It takes a while. And so they were like, that could get appealed. Let's keep, shooting like we're doing and everything's okay. I will say that I'll never forget one night, we had a bank robbery, and it was the next town over in Bryant. And I was on a roadblock, but instead of sitting my car at the road because it wasn't that heavily traveled, I parked my car in a garage. And we had the portable radios back then and stuff. And here comes the bad guy out of the woods. So I see him. Radio won't work. So, of course, he's a felon. He's got the bag of money. And so I shot him like 3 or 4 times. We were carrying revolvers, Model 66s then. Shot him 3 or 4 times. And about that time, you hear on the radio, I can hear him. I can't talk. I got shots fired on Highway 183. Well, it's me, And of course, the cavalry comes. And when I get everything squared away and we get the guy cuffed, I told the first supervisor there, it was Mike Fletcher, was a sergeant. I said, Sergeant, I just want to report. I fired a couple rounds, and he was like, I got some ammo in the trunk. So you just put the rounds back in your loop loader.
Wow.
And filled your gun, and that was it,
Wow, let's even talk about revolvers. Like, what was that like? How the qualification course for guns and that, like, was it similar or?
When we shot a lot further away, we shot at the 50-yard line when I was first a trooper, and it was strong hand and quote weak hand, and so you shot from the 50-yard line. I think it was 12 and 6 left-handed. You got to remember, 50 yards left-handed is against a barricade is still hard.
Yeah, for sure.
But you did it, and everybody qualified and stuff. I did like the revolver. And a funny story, just real quick. When we went to the automatic weapons, we had an armorer who did not like automatic weapons. He was like me, he was older. And this one young kid came in, hey, Sarge, I'm glad we're going to the automatics. I'm glad we're going to the automatics. And he goes, why is that? Well, you got like 15 rounds. And if you get lucky, you might get him. And Sergeant Cox, great guy, goes, well, there's one problem with that. And he goes, what's that, Sarge? If you were lucky, you wouldn't have been in a firefight. So that went out the door.
That's true. That's very true. That's awesome. Those changes, how fast were they in moving from like the Tennessee versus Gardner case law and all that? How progressive was that?
It was once they realized that we couldn't do it anymore, and the Attorney General's office, of course, told us that. Everybody got brought in for a class. And then they told them, this is what you can do now, and it's different. And every once in a while, Kenny, it's a habit. And
Yeah.
some of our guys have been out there for 20 years. Somebody jumps out of a stolen car or whatever, they're going to pop one or two, and then it was a warning shot. So the pink slip, it was a one-page piece of paper, just said where the suspect was, where you were, and why you shot. It wasn't a big deal and stuff. And then eventually it got to be every time you fired your gun, it's a big deal.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's crazy how the change in times. In the grand scheme of things, it's not that long. I mean, it's been 40 years.
Yeah.
In the grand scheme of things, it's not that much time, but the changes have been so drastic. What about the changing stuff, like having the handwrite reports to going to technology?
We had typewriters with carbon paper.
Okay.
And of course, when you made mistakes, you had to pull it all out, liquid paper, everything. It took forever. And so that was a big deal, because a fatality car wreck, you may be at headquarters for 3 or 4 hours. And nowadays, they can knock them out nothing flat,
While you're waiting on the
Yeah, that's it. Your diagram, you're using your hat brim to make a curve, things like that. And nowadays, they've got the graphics.
Ready to go.
Pull it up, and that's it. So I'm grateful for that, because I've always told everybody in my interdiction classes, good street cops hate paperwork.
Yeah.
Even as a lieutenant and a captain, I hated paperwork. I'd be like, get the secretary to do that, or something. I mean, you don't have time for that. We're out here fighting crime.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, for me too, like I would always, when I'm working patrol and we're getting calls for service, I would always be like I would typically volunteer to write the report,
Mhm.
because I knew transporting someone, say, on a retail theft
Sure.
was going to be more time consuming
Yep.
than that. So I'd knock out the report, and I just had it down to like a routine, like, just the elements of the crime and in and out. And I would much prefer to put the paper on it than to transport someone 30 minutes away, wait at booking. And that, I was like, man, I would rather just do the paper on it, just because it seemed a lot easier, free me up faster anyways.
Sure,
So I can go be proactive. When you first started your police career, were you always proactive? Was that always like,
Yeah, I think I had a lot of good FTOs. I really did. And I think that's a key. When I only went to training for about 2 years. And that was in 95. I got promoted to sergeant, went to training. And I was real big on the FTO program, because a lot of the guys went to FTO school. It was like, forget everything you learned in the academy, boy. Just listen to me. And I don't like that. I want them to do what's right and to be smart. And you've got to equip the guys and gals with the right information. Otherwise, it's like their gun's got no rounds in it.
Yeah.
The guy, the auditor or whatever, comes up and goes, well, I've got something. And you're like, okay, I'll take it. I just got to stand here. And I'm not that kind of person. I paid for my own schools a lot of times. I went to a 2-week gang school out in California about 2 weeks before Rodney King. Yeah, so I went out there and rode with them. I've probably paid for about 10 or 15 survival schools and stuff like that. I've always been the kind of person that wanted to be kind of the master of my craft. And I feel like nowadays, it's hard in police work, because if you're a carpenter, you can come in this room and go, wow, those crown moldings look good, and you can take pride in that, Kenny. I can't do that as a policeman, so I've got to be able to excel and be able to go, okay, I got 1,800 pounds of marijuana. I got 600 pounds of cocaine. I got, 800,000 in cash. Because if you get that, the other people in your profession know, well, he's pretty good. And then you can pass your craft to the other ones, because that's what you got to do. You've got to pass this craft. And we spoke about it earlier. I think the one thing that's hurting us nowadays is a lot of the younger officers, they don't have the verbal communication skills that we all had. We all hung out at McDonald's, and we talked all night till 3 or 4 in the morning. We talked on the telephone. We just talked. And nowadays they're doing this. And I also think what hurts police officers is, when I was working interdiction, even from 95 on, I ran the SET team, special enforcement team. And when I started the ICP teams in Arkansas, I used to hate to get phone calls or text messages. Even if it was my own guys sometimes. Sarge, we think we got one here. Oh, God darn it. You were happy for them, but you were like, oh, it takes me off the street.
Yep.
And so that a good street cop doesn't like to use his phones and stuff like that. He just doesn't.
Yeah. No, and we talked about it before too, but I think I see a good change. There was an era of maybe 5 or 6 years that I've noticed where the communication was definitely one of the hardest things to get cops comfortable with. Like just normal communication, like holding a door open and saying hi to people and those types of things. Like it's no fault of their own. It's just the way that society was. It was so involved in social media and that type of thing. I feel like, as weird as it sounds, I feel like TikTok has actually helped the newer generation because even if they're not communicating, they're still watching videos and they're seeing people. So now they kind of understand like communication skills, even if they're not the one that is out there being very verbal, they're very observant and they can read human behavior. Where you go back to Facebook and Instagram and stuff, it's like still family.
Sure.
This TikTok was one that was like very verbal, very communicated oriented, video oriented. And I don't know if that's the change, but the past maybe 2-3 years with my agency alone, we've hired some amazing cops that have great communication skills. And it kind of brings me back to the era when I was trying to get hired where you'd have one applicant or one opening and 100 applicants, and I'm like, and I built a lot of friends through that because you'd see the same 100 people every other weekend testing, trying to be the police. And, like, all right, I guess he got hired because he's not at this one.
Well, I think that the public, unfortunately, when they went through all this protests and stuff in, the 18 to 2020 era, they caused police officers to get more in a shell. They caused them not to want to talk to people and stuff. And in turn, they got less good applicants to apply to be police officers. We do have a lot of people in there that shouldn't be wearing the uniform and shouldn't be wearing a badge. You know that, and I know it. But I do see a lot of good young officers nowadays. I really do. And it does your heart good to see them professional. When I went in training in 95, I went to our director because I just read a study about this thing called PIT. Nobody knew about it. So I went to the director of the state police. I said, I'd like to go to this school. And he said, what is it? I told him, I explained, showed him the video. And he goes, oh gosh, we're going to put a car against another car, push them off the road. I went, yes, sir. School. Well, it was $10,000 an instructor. 2-week school in California. He sent me and Lieutenant Roy Brooks. I was a sergeant. We went out there and you had to do 500 pits on one side and 500 pits on the other to become an instructor. And we came back and then I had to sell it to the administration. And I was a captain, but I'm going to say, when you tell a captain, okay, they got to put the car against another car and they're going to dent it up, no, we're not doing that.
Yeah, exactly.
But it went over and the captains liked it and stuff. And we did it at lower speeds. We've got a director now and a command staff. And I don't know if you see any of our videos, like on.
I see some of the pit videos.
Okay. We do them at some really high speeds, well over 100. And I'll just say this. I like the police to chase the bad guy. I like the police to catch the bad guy. And I like the bad guy to go to jail. That's what I like. And so if we accomplish all three of those as a captain, I was real happy with my guys, So that's where we're at. And I think, at least in Arkansas, we've got a lot of good police officers and troopers that want to catch the bad guys. And they really want to serve the community and let the other people see that, hey, I'm out here trying to help you. And I'm out here trying to protect your stuff when you're 60 miles away at your job. That's what we're here for. And I think that we're getting back in that groove. And I like to see that.
Yeah, I feel like Arkansas, one of a few, I guess, many states actually, but there's a lot of states. Arkansas is one of them where you have a good reputation, even amongst criminals. Like, don't go to Arkansas to commit crimes. Like it's very well known. Like, you're going to go to jail. You're going to actually do jail time, and I think fear of the criminal justice system in some locations, that not being instilled, encourages crime to flourish. So if you're, this state as a whole, people know that if you do something wrong, you're going to pay for you're going to have some consequences to those actions. And I think that's a good thing in general.
Sure.
Being afraid of the criminal justice system is something that needs to be instilled back throughout the country. And it's going to deter crime.
I agree.
And I mean, chasing people, for a while there's a lot of departments that went away from it. And I feel like it's coming back because it became almost like an epidemic proportion where you emboldened people to run. not only just commit crimes, now they're like, oh, well, they can't chase me, I'm going to run. And all you're doing is putting society at risk, the innocent people, because even if you don't chase them, they're still going to be going 120 miles an hour with the fear that you are chasing them.
Yeah.
And, they don't have the skills and training to drive like cops. You're just, I feel like you put society more at risk by allowing people to run.
Well, Colonel Hager's put a great PSA out there, and he stands out in front of our headquarters with the star in the background, and he says, if you're going to run, we've equipped our troopers and trained our troopers to catch you. And we're going to put the bumper to it, meaning we're going to put the bumper on your car and we're going to throw you in the ditch. And people can say what they want. If criminals keep getting away with things, that's their life. It's just like drug smuggling. When I would catch drug smugglers all the time, and I'd say, how much you making? 10,000, 20,000, 25,000. And you sometimes would ask, we caught one guy, I won't say what state it was, but we did a controlled delivery to his state on the special enforcement team. And his mother was the assistant warden for the prison system of the whole state. And we asked him, why did you do this? And he goes, it's just the thrill of it. He said, some of the times I'd get the load in California, Arizona, and I'd go to my state, which was on the East Coast, and I'd laugh every time I passed one of y'all. I'd point or I'd flip the bird underneath the window, ha, I got by and stuff. The kid had $400,000 in a savings account when we caught him.
Wow. Yeah. I mean,
it was the thrill.
Yeah. I mean, and I sometimes I feel like those guys would be probably pretty good cops too, because, they'll tone the line. Like if you didn't go down that avenue,
Yeah.
because it's very similar. Like, you want to catch the bad guy or playing cops and robbers as kids. It's a very fine line of where you're going to end up. And I think that most boys playing cops and robbers, they want to be on one side or the other. And if we were able to foster that, I mean, how do you? I guess him, like his mom was in the criminal justice system,
Of course, you got to kind of blame some of the women out there because it seems like the women like the bad boys.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, yeah. I mean, even movies now and stuff. The bad guys turn into the good guy somehow. They flip the script and they become the good guy in the situation.
I think that policemen and criminals, and I've told people before, when you catch them with I don't care if it's 2,000 pounds of weed or 40 pounds of coke. I didn't ever make it a personal deal. I really didn't.
Same, I don't.
Because they made a decision, and I told them the only two mistakes you've made to me is you loaded your car up with those drugs and you crossed the state line at Arkansas. And most of the time I worked just inside Arkansas, about 30, 40 miles at Russellville, and then in Little Rock the rest of the time. And I told them, I'm willing to cooperate with you. And if you want to do a controlled delivery, and we did something like, I think the last I counted, we had like 87 controlled deliveries we took to other states. And it was fun. I mean, I enjoyed it. My wife didn't, because you're gone for 5 or 6 days, because a dope dealer, he's never on time. So sometimes we would take the truck with the meth in the spare tire. We'd take the license plates off, take the wheels off the truck. We'd load it on an airplane. We'd fly all 5 out there. I'd call the Georgia State Police, Dallas Van Scooten or Kermit out there in Georgia, and we'd find the same color truck. We'd put the wheels, the license plates on it. So we had an 8-10 hour head start. And he'd say, okay, I'm supposed to go to this Holiday Inn or this Walmart. Well, now we could plan and everything, so we'd do it. We'd catch the bad guys and stuff and get, a couple $100,000 in cash and more dope. It was a thrill.
Yeah. No, I think when you get to that high level, for me, a lot of times I've noticed that it's someone either that was raised in that game or someone that was vulnerable, someone close to the game preyed on that vulnerability.
Agree.
And so I'm not, when I get smuggler, I have no ill will against them. It is what it is. Like if tables were turned and I was, I don't know, my wife was dying of cancer or something and I didn't have means and someone offered me an opportunity. I mean, my moral compass, I think, is good enough. But, when someone's life's depending on it in those situations, and that's just one scenario that I can think off the top of my head where I'm like, and I probably do anything help my wife and I.
It's easy money. And when we were, our director way back wanted us to teach all the troopers interdiction. And John Scarborough and I and a couple other guys all said, that's a mistake. Because say what you want, there's good and bad in every profession. And lo and behold, about 8, 9 months after it happened, I get a call from one of my Trooper Texas friends, and he says, "Hey," he said, "you guys working tonight?" And I said, "We are. You got a tip? You got something?" And we all know they don't come through that much, but he goes, "We had a guy that he went to a dope house in an old 79 Plymouth with 3 antennas on the back, and when he opened the trunk, they put I think it was 80 pounds of weed in the back, just the bundles. He covered it up with a yellow raincoat that had a blue Arkansas State Police star on it." We're like, "Oh, great." So sure enough, we set up, and the guy got caught, and he was a trooper from Northeast Arkansas, an Arkansas trooper, and went to the federal penitentiary and stuff for it. So the amount of money, and I think people's moral compass being weak sometimes, like we all said, I think sometimes that gets the best of them. And I try a lot of times to, see what their story might be, just like you do with these podcasts. And you sometimes wonder, have you got a child that's got cancer? Have you got something going on? And a lot of times it's just the fact that they can't keep up with the lifestyle they had. And a lot of the things, like landscapers, for instance, you show me a guy in a landscape truck from Arizona, he's coming across I-40. It's kind of like when 9/11 happened. I don't know if anybody's ever told you this or not, but after 9/11 happened, if you saw the yellow ribbons, support our troops, if you saw 3 or 4 of those on a car coming through, it was like, we didn't have LPRs or anything,
Right.
but it was like everything in the car in a magnet. Zoom! And you get them pulled over. "Oh, yeah, are these terrorists, man, support our troops. I'm all American." And you're probably searching the car. "Well, yeah, I do, because, the Constitution says," and you're like, "Wait a minute. I thought you were this support our troops and the whole bit. We're just trying to do something with the war on drugs." "Well, we'll get the dog up here." Get the dog. They had dope. It was just, you can ask anybody that's old school drug catcher, that was the thing to look for.
Yeah, I mean, disclaimers I talk about in my class are very similar. Like, I mean, but like disclaimers that say, like, portray me as a pro law enforcement, pro military, I'm a good person, like those types of things.
Yep.
Those always stand out on cars with me. And like you said, when you ask them questions about those, like, how is this important to you? What is so meaningful that you would take the time to put this on your car? And a lot of the answers you get don't coincide with what they're trying to say.
Exactly.
So yeah, I love disclaimers on cars, but yeah, I did. You're the first one that talked about the 9/11 and those yellow ribbons. I remember them all over the place.
It was everywhere.
Yep.
And people, of course, back then, when I first started Interdiction in 83, I'd say probably 80%, 75% of our dope was trunk dope. It was just in the trunk, suitcases or loose. Probably about 85 or so is when we first started seeing compartments. John Scarborough and I got a Chevrolet station wagon. It was back when our fleet was in terrible shape, and the guy had 20,000 miles on it. And I kept asking him, I said, "Well, when's the last time you had your oil changed?" And he goes, "What?" I said, "When's the last time your oil changed?" He goes, "I don't know. I had the sticker up there, And I said, "You don't know when you had your oil changed? Where'd you get it at? Jiffy Lube or whatever?" He knew nothing about the car. So I knew someone just said, "Here's the key, take off." And we searched that thing, and it had about a 3-inch compartment, and he had 188 kilos of cocaine in the back. And we were so proud of ourselves and stuff. And then we come to find out about a year or 2 later, the feds worked out something with him. He snitched off a bigger guy, and he got like 2 years. And we were like, "Man, we caught like Pablo Escobar."
See, I've never held that. Like, I'm always about the bigger fish. I mean, that's a ton of dope, but yeah, like, if you're gonna give me someone that has more than that, like, I'm like,
yeah, it is. And that's what when we do controlled deliveries, we'd say, "What are we gonna get if we take this there?" Stuff. And we took several loads to Florida, and the guy was like, "He's got Porsches, Ferraris," and we're like, "Oh, that's a good one."
So when you were doing these controlled deliveries to other states, and there was a type of seizure on the other end, you guys would split that up, or would the feds get involved?
Sometimes we use the feds and stuff. A lot of times, we would just notify the DEA here, and sometimes they weren't interested. I will say that a lot of the times when we would call to like Florida or Atlanta, we said, "We got 100 pounds of cocaine," and they're like, "Call us back when you got 500." So you got that a lot.
Yeah.
And it would hurt your heart because you thought, man, it's 100 pounds of coke.
Right.
And they were like, no, look, player from Arkansas. So
Even back then, that was that way.
Yeah, it hurt our feelings a lot and stuff. But I will say that we worked a lot with the county and the state people and the city people. And I told you before, when we took that big Ryder truck up to Indiana, we worked with the sheriff's office because the state police were like, we don't do controlled deliveries. And we're like, you're the state police. We're like, yeah, where's it going? We told them, you need to call the sheriff's office. And we're like, okay. So, I mean, I'm sending 3 troopers with a Ryder truck and an unmarked police car, and I'm having to, call a sheriff's office, and I don't know if it's a 10-man department or an 80-man department. I don't know, so that's where we'd go sometimes. But we never really had any bad deals. We had one time where we took, I think it was about 1,800 pounds that Chris Goodman got to Mississippi, and there was a lot of inner squabbling about who was going to get the bust. We had called the state police, but then you had the Mississippi, I think, Bureau of Narcotics.
Oh, yeah.
So everybody wanted a hand in the pie. And you had that every once in a while. But we just want to catch the bad guys.
Yeah. I mean, I guess there's still politics. But Indiana doesn't have like Bureau of Narcotics. It's all the state police under the same envelope. But for the longest time, like Ohio, Michigan, Illinois had great interdiction teams. And Indiana has some great interdictors, but they've never had a dedicated team. Till recently, they're starting to form one. But so I'm not surprised that back then they were like like that was just kind of out of their wheelhouse at the time. And I wonder where you went, because I know up north in Lake County by Gary, they've had an. I bet. And they're probably one of the oldest ones in the state.
I'll ask Vic and Richard when we get finished. I'll text them and see where it was. But I know they had real good results with them, and they did do a controlled deal and stuff. We had one that we got a lot of gold bars out of a guy's vault and stuff. And of course, we were all like, because he had, I think it was like about 150, 200,000 in gold bars.
Wow.
So.
Yeah, and that was a trend for a little bit where we were seeing gold being transported, like a lot of gold, and I think it was to try to avoid the asset forfeiture aspect of it, but didn't really work out when you're a criminal and you don't have any justification for the money. So we we got used to using the gold, selling the gold or whatever, and going that asset forfeiture that way. But that's interesting to me that even back then they were using gold to hide the money laundering.
Yeah, and you got to remember, people act like smuggling is new. People smuggled alcohol during Prohibition. The old plywood things where you see the people go, oh, look, there's people they got illegal aliens, or they got drugs with the stack of plywood or sheetrock, and the centers are all cut out. Those were popular back in the 30s. This is nothing new. And trends, it seems like, always repeat themselves. We're not really seeing anything new. And I always applaud you and other instructors I see on social media that go, get the void, check all the voids. Jason Aaron, who's now a lieutenant colonel, and Kyle Drown, who is a captain in Troop J.
I think it's pretty evident that I'll probably be speaking at the Justice X conference, but I wanted to give my little instructor spiel like everyone else's. And the main reason is because I wanted to come in here and thank all these amazing instructors that are willing to donate their time away from their family, their profession, and their friends to come and make the profession better. I don't know how I became so lucky with the ability to surround myself with amazing people in this profession. I have some of the most amazing friends in this profession. They're the most selfless individuals willing to go out on a whim, put a conference together with me, and just to try to make the profession a little bit better. And I don't know how I pulled this off. I don't know what it is, but I'm beyond grateful for them. That being said, when I speak at the conference, communication is the biggest thing to me. I think that communication is the most important tool that we have as cops, and that's not verbal communication. That could be nonverbal communication. I'm going to focus a lot of my instruction on that aspect, where communication is universal. It doesn't have to just pertain to interdiction. It's all of law enforcement. If you have the ability to communicate with someone that is a multimillionaire and a guy that's homeless living on the street, your career is going to be a lot more fruitful. and you have this ability to have a lot more empathy when you're communicating and understanding and actively listening. Someone else came up with this. I love it, so I'm going to throw it out there. As cops, we are often waiting to respond, and we're not actively listening. But you can't do them both. So I think as cops, you ask a question, engage, and actively watch what their response is. It doesn't have to be this such a strict format of what you're asking, chronological order or anything like that. Let a conversation flow like you're talking to one of your friends. Don't just be so rigid. And that's where I think a lot of us fail, and it's not our fault. Until you know that you're doing it wrong, you'll never know. Like I was very robotic as a cop, and I couldn't communicate with people. I know that for a fact. I'm introverted, and I go to the police academy and all this other stuff. But anyways, I can't wait to see you in South Carolina in April of 2026 with all these amazing instructors. All right. As everyone can see, we have Keith back. And the reason is because for some reason, only half the podcast recorded. So I had to bother him again. And I'm very grateful that he decided to join me, even though it's remotely and it's not as cool as it was last time. But we talked about so much amazing things that I just wanted to make sure that we covered it. So thank you for donating even more time to me.
Hey, my pleasure.
So where we left off last time, we were talking about a lot of times, you know, we're as cops, we're looking for like the guns, drugs, and money, and we always think that we're missing compartments. But a lot of times, I feel like other crimes are prevalent, like you know, credit card re-encoders and those types of things, right? They're prevalent in the car, and as cops, we get so focused on like, oh, I missed a compartment. And when it comes to compartments, they have to be built somewhere. Like they can't. Like it's a box. It's a box somewhere. Like it's not. It can't be imaginary. So it's into something or out of something. And I think as cops, once we start to slow down a little bit, I think that there's many other crimes that could be prevalent in interdiction. It's just not the the guns, drugs, and money.
I agree. And Kenny, he's now the lieutenant colonel of the state police, but Jason Aaron was on the interdiction team in Fort Smith. And when I was in Clarksville, we invited them over for a saturation. And he made a traffic stop, and I think Bobby Brown or Roby Rhodes were with him. But they made a traffic stop on a guy, and both of them kept the car there for quite some time. And later on, we took a break. They both made the comment that they thought something was there. They said, we let one go. We missed it. And I was like, okay, well, I mean, they're professionals. And I knew if they said that, they thought they missed something. Fast forward about a week or two, I get a phone call from headquarters, and they said, hey, somebody from, I think it was like Virginia or somewhere, called and said that they wanted to talk to you. And I said, okay. So I called him back, and the guy said, look, he said, we're investigating a stop y'all made on a car. The license plate was ABC 123. Well, in Arkansas, we can't run tags and see if any other agency has run them. I guess they can up north or whatever. And maybe now they can down here. But they sat there and said that we had made a traffic stop on it. I said, what kind of car was it again? He told me, and he gave me the name and stuff. And I said, I think that was Jason Aaron. So I called Jason Aaron, and then Jason Aaron called the guy. It was about an hour later or so. Jason called me, and he said, hey, Sarge, you won't believe this. I said, what is it? He said, remember the guy I told you we missed something on? I said, yeah. I said, Miss Dope or what? And he goes, no. He said, we told you had some photographs with him and stuff like that. I said, yeah. He said, well, he is the suspect now in a triple homicide, and the boys' bodies were in the basement of the house.
Wow.
And they think he was coming back from doing something, either hiding part of the body parts or doing something like out west, Vegas or somewhere. I don't recall, but it's just that kind of stuff. And we've all had it happen. We all can't stand when the guy, after you searched him for an hour and you're thinking, boy, if this was me out here in 100-degree heat for an hour, and they come up to you and go, well, thank you, officer. I know you're just doing your job. And you're going, oh, God.
Yeah.
You missed it.
Yeah, I get it. But even then, like Jason doesn't know anything at that point. There's nothing as a crime relevant. You just know that he's being deceptive for some reason. And then, yeah, like, I mean, those are completely innocent things at the time.
And when you talk about checking for voids, Jason Aaron, the same trooper, and Kyle Drown, who's now a captain with the state police in Clarksville, they had stopped an ECA coach line, which was one of the big drug smuggling operations back in the early 2000s, late 90s. And they were lease buses. And they kept moving this little table. It was probably about 15 inches by 20 inches tall, I remember us moving it like 20 times while we were searching under the seats, pulling the carpet back, looking for tooling on the screws. And then finally, I think it was Jason that flipped the thing over and he found a nail in it, and he pulled the nail out of the bottom and it had a slide panel, and there was 400 and some odd $1,000 cash in there. So it's just checking the voids. Like you said, it's not a magic trick. If they've got the bottle of water and the wrapper, you can't see through there, make sure you can unscrew it or whatever. You've got to check for the voids. That's all there is to it.
Yeah. I mean, I think as cops, we complicate it more than, like for me, like if you put something in the engine compartment, you're probably going to beat me. It's just not my forte. But most compartments that I come across are usually like, a little more quick access type of compartments, and
Sure.
and not so much of a deeper hide. I mean, I'm sure that I've missed them or whatever, but I mean, it's just if you clear a car systematically every time, I think that you're going to be just fine. And we make it more complicated in our own minds than it really needs to be.
I agree 100%.
When it comes to interdiction too, we talked about it last time, but like the ability to communicate and be charismatic, because when you're working interdiction, your tactics kind of change, but never letting down like the safety aspect of it. So, what would your advice be to young interdiction guys who are aspiring?
Um, it is a fine line, but you've always got to keep that safety factor number one, because going home is the most important. And there's no load of dope out here, none. Trust me. I don't care if you get 10,000 kilos of cocaine and fentanyl. It's not worth your life, because that's the end, and you're leaving behind so many people that care about you. So I think the big thing is you've got to kind of act a little bit country or a little bit slow or a little bit, the what people think. You eat donuts, you don't have very much intelligence, go with that. But at all times, keep your officer safety on 100. And like we said before when we were talking, to me, the thing that's been lost lately is the contact and cover officer. A cover officer is the lifeguard of the pool. He stands back about 10, 15 feet. He may not hear what's going on. I don't care. I don't want him to be the one asking questions or anything like that. He can just be sitting there watching. When we used to do it quite a bit, we had a code to where if, say, Kyle was searching a vehicle and I was the cover officer, if the guy started acting hinky when Kyle was underneath the spare tire, or if he started acting hinky was Kyle was looking at the headliner, we'd have a code and say, I got something in my eye. I got something in my eye. And that meant, hey, you're hot on something. Or it also meant keep an eye on me because the guy's getting a little hinky out here. So it's kind of a little code there to where we knew it. And if the trooper found the compartment or whatever, he might say, hey, why don't you call, and we had a code, why don't you call Roby, ask him to come up this way. And that way I knew that I'm getting ready to draw down on this guy, and he's already up to speed. Now I'm up to speed without anybody knowing anything. Because like you said, you want to make sure that you're acting a little bit slow, but you got good officer safety. And I think that's the big key.
I love that analogy that you use, because even now, I like the officer standing so far back and observing everything. I still think our backups, are a little closer than I guess they were back then. And I don't know. I like it because now you get to observe everything, and you're helping him out when he's searching. You're judging that human behavior and that reaction to the places that he's searching to see if there is anything with the driver or occupants.
Yeah, and you got to remember, if he's got a firearm, if you've missed it, you patted him down, you missed it. He had it in his hand, or he put it up his sleeve, or whatever he did. Got it in his hat, little 22 North American Mini. When you're further apart, that guy's got to also wonder, can I get both of them? By the time I shoot this one, what's this guy going to do? And I think a lot of times we don't realize that by that guy being behind him or being farther out of the picture, maybe he's kind of back to where the spotlight is up here. He's behind that. He can see every move. It makes them hinky that they can't see him, or that he's just relaxing and sitting there, having a little conversation with himself. That's all.
Yeah, I like it. I mean, you're the first person that's ever kind of brought that to my attention, and I've been in the job for 18 years. Yeah, like that, like usually that's I personally have never been taught that, so I was like, man, and I love the analogy. We do the code words and those things; those are pretty common. But yeah, like the way that you guys were like such a well-oiled machine and communicated with each other, and it just seems that it was very proficient.
And Kenny, we brought it up last time. I want you to understand that if, let's just say, Kenny's searching the car and Keith is the cover officer, I'm not engaging in conversation or anything. If they sit there and say, I want to go to the bathroom or whatever, I tell them, you need to talk to him in a minute. He's searching. Let's just keep the conversation to a minimum. I don't care about being their buddy. That's not what I'm there for. And I'm not there to talk about the weather and everything else. The other side of the coin is, let's say Kenny's searching the car and I see Kenny miss a couple places that interest me. When Kenny goes, okay, all right. And I say, hey, Kenny, can I talk to you for a minute? And then you come to me and they can't hear us. And I say, look, can I have 5 minutes, 6 minutes? I'd like to look at something. He acted a little hinky, or I think you missed the floor compartment, or I think you missed underneath the vehicle. You didn't look under the vehicle good enough. I'm noticing the spare tires lower behind the license plate. Just something. Give the other guy a chance to work his magic too. It's not a one-man show.
Yeah, no, I like that too. I like having another guy search after I searched, or vice versa, and it's nothing, no indictment of them or anything. It's just like two sets of eyes are better than one, and you might see something that I miss completely. So I never take a offense to that if someone was to say that or anything along those lines.
Good.
When last time we talked a lot about you've had a lot of loss within the state police while you were there. You brought up one. Yeah, you brought maybe more than one, but the one of the sovereign citizens. Those were interdiction guys, or are they just taking your class?
Yeah,
the cops.
One of the classes that I started with the Criminal Justice Institute back, I believe it was 99, and I had some troopers help me teach the class. We taught 3 up in Northeast Arkansas, and 2 of them were the 2 West Memphis officers that stopped the sovereign citizens. And believe it or not, I always say bad things come in 3s. That's just been a police saying, and it usually rings true. And we also had a police officer up in Northeast Arkansas right after that. So we lost 3 in that class. And the sovereign citizen guys, it was Potter and Evans out of West Memphis. Great interdiction officers. They made like a $2 million seizure about 2 or 3 weeks after the class. They got several loads of cocaine. I mean, these were some real good street cops. And you and I both know a street cop's way up here. And like I've said before, when you're looking out here for the local thugs and you're a brand new policeman or 20-year policeman and you're just catching the locals, you're flipping the rocks over and you're looking for the potato bug and the worm and, the crickets and all that stuff. You're really not going to get hurt most of the time. You can, but not most of the time. When you're working interdiction, you flip that rock, you've got to be ready to jump back because there's going to be a scorpion or a rattlesnake or something like that. They've got a lot to lose. And especially with people that travel the interstates, they think they're not known. They think people don't know where they're at. They think they can commit a crime and get away. We all know that. And they made a traffic stop on a father and son, and they came out guns blazing after they got their ID and stuff and took off, left the officers on the side of the Interstate 40, and then got in a shootout with Michael Neal, who's now the sheriff in Eastern Arkansas, but he was a game and fish officer, and he did a fantastic job. He shot through the windshield. You couldn't believe how good this guy did it. It was textbook. And those are the kind of things that really hurt you because, like I said before, and we teach in our interdiction classes, looking for dope is like going on an ice-covered lake. And you get on that ice, and you might hear a couple cracks, and we're all kind of, well, he's got dope. I know he's got dope. Or it's that semi-rig. He's got a load of dope in there. So you roll that door open on one side, and you crawl inside, but you didn't take your handcuffs, and you didn't handcuff the door open so they can't shut it on you and take off with your body in the back of the truck. So you're hearing those cracks, and you keep going and keep going and keep going. And then sooner or later, you hear the big crack and you fall into the water through the ice and you can't get back out. And unfortunately, that's what's happened to quite a few interdiction officers. I always say, if you start hearing the cracks, if you think that's a load of dope, I don't care if it's Jimmy Hoffa's body that was taken away 40, 50 years ago. It's not worth it. You've got kids, wife, mom, dad, co-workers. It's not worth it.
Yeah. No, I agree. And the handcuff key on the semis, we talked about that before, but
Good.
yeah, it works. Especially like, I mean, if you listen to Shannon Shelf's podcast, he talks about how he was doing risky things, and then by the grace of God, he thinks like he was able to see another semi pulling into a way station, and it had backlit the individuals that you were coming up to close him into an enclosed semi, and they had a couple 100 pounds of weed or something back in the day. But yeah, I mean, it's a real thing, and I think that as interdictors, we kind of turn off our ears when we start hearing those initial cracks until sometimes it's like, oh shit, that's a big crack, or oh shit, like we're getting wet.
I mean, we all get tunnel vision.
Yep.
The faster that heart rate goes, the less you hear things, and the more your eyes tend to focus on the prize or the threat. Excuse me. And it's just like body language. You know, if you see a guy and he's got his head down and he's not listening to what you're saying, more than likely he's going to fight you. It's just like a ram or a bull or anything. They put their head down and it's going to be a fight. You see somebody with their head up, not listening to you and doing this, he's getting ready to do that felony flight. Yep. With those tennis shoes. I mean, that's what animals do. That's what humans do. It's there.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, when people start like kind of disregarding you, that I think that's huge, and they like looking over their shoulders and stuff. It's like, he's gonna run here in a minute. You just be prepared.
Yep.
You've had so many. Again, you over 40 years in law enforcement, so you've kind of lived an amazing life in your profession. But you also were working in Arkansas during the Noriega days. Was it Iron Contra Fair?
Well, we had the airport at Mena, and I was a younger trooper when they were doing that. I started on the highway in 79 and retired in 2020. And at first, you know, a couple of the troopers were saying things about drugs in Mena and stuff, and I had just started stopping loads of drugs. And then we went to a pipeline school that Louisiana State Police and the DEA put on back, I believe it was 83. And I'd caught a couple loads of dope, but it was mostly trunk dope. Back then, there wasn't as many compartments. It was just throw it in the trunk and go, because most cops didn't look, and they knew it. So why bother? And one of the guys, Ronnie, who was a state police undercover officer, he'd seen that I'd gotten some loads, and he told me one day when he was at the shop, he said, man, I'll tell you what, you need to start getting these McDonald's semi-rigs. I said, what? He said, McDonald's. If you see McDonald's tractor trailer rigs, look at them hard. Look at them hard. And I was like, I see McDonald's trucks on I-30 every day, Ronnie. What are you saying? And he said, they're hauling thousands of pounds of cocaine. And I was like, what? Of course, we hadn't heard of cloned vehicles back in those days. I didn't really hear of cloned vehicles until about the mid-90s when we were catching ambulances, DirecTV, FedEx trucks, things like that. Yeah. But in the 80s, you didn't hear about cloned vehicles. Maybe they were getting by and we just didn't know about it. But he started talking about it a lot. And he said, man, I'm telling you, they're moving drugs in the United States through this Mena airport. And I was like, wow. And so then, like about a year or two later, you know how everybody's an agency. State police was probably 450 troopers back then total. And when somebody goes to internal affairs, especially when you work in Little Rock, you knew who was going to internal affairs. And they'd said they were calling him in because he kept hiding in the woods and taking photographs and documenting all these planes and stuff. And all of a sudden, we started talking to other troopers close to him, and they were saying, man, they're building banks. The airport's grown by 400%. You know, there's big buildings, and you're thinking, Mena, Arkansas, what the heck? And sure enough, you know, he was right. And they were telling him, and I don't know who they were, but he was being told, leave it alone. And it was a couple, maybe like a year later, that he allegedly was in the woods and he contracted Agent Orange in the woods. So they had put Agent Orange, somebody put Agent
Wow.
Orange in the woods, and he got it. And he passed away, I think, about a year or two ago. And he was on Facebook for a while posting all of his notes and case file notes where him and an IRS agent named Duncan, a DEA guy and stuff, and they were talking about all these loads of dope. Barry Seal, which we all know, Barry Seal was the godfather of smuggling drugs by aviation. I mean, we're talking big planes and big dope. And then Ronnie told us that somebody set up Barry Seal at that halfway house in Louisiana, and they wanted him dead so he couldn't talk because he was getting ready to testify.
Wow, that's crazy. And so he this whole time, like the from the McDonald's on, like he knew something was up, but
Oh, yeah.
he didn't know to what level. I guess he didn't know the
Yeah, he never shared that with me, and I'm not going to speculate
yeah.
because you've got so many folks that say this person was involved with that one. I don't know. But I think that when you had the Contra hearings, I think they pretty much documented how much drugs were brought in. And one thing that I said to you earlier is our government, which I love the United States of America. I was in the Army. I've done 40 some odd years with the state police. I mean, I'm true blue all the way. But I also know that our country's done some bad things. And I wonder if some people didn't bring cocaine and invent crack cocaine, distribute crack cocaine in the inner cities, which caused most of the African Americans that got involved with that, especially males, to go to prisons, lose their right to vote, can't carry guns. You pretty much took out a segment of society while you were also feeding your guns and drug swap for money. And the same thing happened 10, 15 years later when methamphetamine started coming. I mean, let's face it, it was mostly the white guys that got involved in meth. So we had whites that lost their right to vote, couldn't carry guns and stuff. There's a lot of science and a lot of things that go behind drug trafficking. It's not just the money.
Yeah, I wonder at what level and what role. I don't know. It just some of the stuff seems like it's so beyond some of the people that got the blame. Like like you came from nothing. I mean, just look at like El Chapo.
Yeah.
Like he
Yeah.
came from nothing, and now he's worth multi-millions, and you had no help. You just did it on your own.
Mhm.
I mean, I guess maybe it's possible. Just some things seem, and I don't know. I don't necessarily think like in that situation, our government, but maybe you had some people, like and within the Mexican government that helped them to excel.
Well, we went to Miami. A good friend of mine, Win Rockefeller, had the Allied Marine, which was the world's largest Hatteras dealership in Miami. And I would talk to Win, and we stayed there for like about a week. I took some other cop friends, and we watched them film Miami Vice at night because they used the boatyard, which was about, I don't know, 15 blocks by 10 blocks, something like that. It was huge. And we would be down there, and the amount of money in the 80s, the late 80s and stuff, the cars, the women, the gold rings, everything, the clubs you went into and stuff, the amount of money that was in South Florida. I mean, it was built on drug funds. There's
Yeah.
no doubt about it.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Like at the highest level, it has to be. Like at minimum, someone's turning a blind eye. They maybe not complicit in it. Well, I don't know, but someone's like, well, that's a lot of money. That's a lot of tax revenue. Like someone's in there. You know what I'm saying? Where they're like, well, we'll just kind of let it slide until it becomes violent, and then like, oh shit, it got out of hand.
Well, you remember Donzi, who made some of the fastest speedboats or go fast boats in Florida, fastest in the world. They machine gunned him in Miami. And it was because they were upset that he was making boats for other people and the government. I think it was Blue Lightning, Blue Thunder, whatever it was called down there in the Keys. And he was mad at that kind of stuff. And he was killed in the daytime in Florida. And I remember even when Rockefeller saying, we don't even want to deal with folks that are paying cash or whatever, because they just came in with suitcases full of cash. And back then there wasn't the trails of tracing money and license plate readers and things like that. I mean, you could have a fake ID and have some kind of little hat and a mustache, and next day be clean shaven, and they wouldn't even know who you were because there wasn't facial recognition.
Yeah, that's crazy. And yeah, like even the evolution of law enforcement in that capacity, you know what I mean?
Yep.
It's so hard. I mean, I guess crypto is a way right now that they're beating most cops, the investigations. But like beyond that, like if you, it's hard to even, traffic that kind of money, bulk cash, without getting caught. Yeah, it's just the evolution's crazy to me.
Well, and you don't see the big cash seizures you used to see. You just don't. I mean, I remember when Georgia State Patrol made, I think it was a $6 or $7 million seizure, and it was in a bull wagon,
Yep, that
and
was
they
around for a long time.
in the floors and stuff. Yeah. And the trooper that made the stop called a supervisor. She's like, "We're not going to unload those cows. The hell with it. Let it roll. Let it roll." And luckily, someone in the interdiction network said, if you got a feeling, let's unload it. They did, and they got that big seizure. But I remember in Texas and stuff, Robert Morris, Russell Metcalf, a lot of those guys, $2 million seizures, you'd see it on Road Warrior, a lot. And a $1 million seizure, if you got $1 million seizure, Road Warrior gave you a $1 million, I got $1 million t-shirt.
Cool.
So you got to wear it with pride.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, I'm trying to think. Like I'm part of some of the pages where they post. I've not seen $1 million seizure in a while.
Yeah.
I think
And it used to be, I would say, at least at least 2 or 3 weeks.
Wow, that's crazy. Yeah, I mean, I guess a few years ago, you were seeing them maybe 6 times a year, 7 times. But yeah, that's crazy compared to a few weeks. I know that I think it was right around COVID. I know Illinois got one. It was like $9 million in the summer. It was just Pelican cases of money. And I think I think Georgia stood for a while. I think that might have been the largest cold stop seizure, cash wise. And that was right around the COVID area, maybe 2019 to 2021, somewhere around there. But yeah, I've not seen anything even close to that since then.
Yeah. And like I said, my guys used to get lots of 700,000, 800,000, 600,000. The biggest I've ever gotten, I got 788,000 out of a ECA tour bus. And it was where the bunks were. When I pulled the covers up or whatever, I could see tooling on the bed screws. And I pulled it up and there was a suitcase in there, and they just claimed it. They said they didn't know who it was.
From my experience, most big money like that, they're going to disclaim it. And my rationalization is like, if they try to claim it, now they're gonna have to pay taxes on it. It's not their money to begin with. It's all kinds of, so I feel like when it's not their money, it's that big, it's very rare for someone to try to claim it because they know the ramifications of it on the back end.
I agree with you. And speaking of money real quick, I also want to say this. When I had the guys on the SET team, special enforcement team, and when we started the ICP team, about 2004 or 5, I would tell my guys, unless we've got some dope, and I don't care what everybody else does, they can do their own thing. If we don't have any dope with it and we can't show some nexus with the money, some real clear nexus, if it was under, say, 60, 70,000, we let it roll. Just because you got too many juries and stuff that the guy will say, well, I was going to Memphis from the border to go buy a brand new Chevy truck. And man, trucks nowadays, $80,000, $90,000.
Yeah.
So it's hard to do all that. And it's just not worth all the heat. I mean, money's good. And I know the sheriff and the chief of police and the director of the state police, they all like money. We all know that. They start looking at, well, there's 4 cars. There's this, we can buy that. I get that. But you got to be careful there, because a lot of Americans that don't do anything in the drug trade, they don't like that. Where's the crime? Where's the crime?
Yep.
So.
Yeah. I mean, we have to have a nexus. So the way we do it is to stop whatever's in there. We're still trying to get above the For us, it's $20,000 per person in the vehicle or something like that. And that's also within Nexus. And even those low numbers are the ones that are the ones that get fought the most. So we know that. So we want a solid Nexus with that those like $20,000 or less. So it's very rare that unless it's like we run them through like Epic or something. He's got an open investigation or something, you know, like then we're like, all right, well, you know, it's kind of, but yeah, like it's very rare that we're messing with anything small like that. And for us to do it, we see everything on the stop. We have either an investigator or TFO, and then it goes to an asset forfeiture attorney, and like basically all three of us have to be like yes, and then we go forward with it. So there's a lot of checks and balances because I'd rather let a bad guy keep his money than take one innocent person's dollar. It's just not. I would feel sick about it.
I agree, and you and I both know that a lot of Hispanics that travel the country. And we talked about it, I don't know if it's on the other video or not, but they come from North Carolina, they're traveling east on 40, and they said, well, I've been, you know, picking tobacco, or I've been sheetrocking, or whatever. And like I said before, if they've got calluses on their hands, I always look at their hands. And if I see calluses or cut marks from where they've been cutting tobacco and stuff like that, he's probably going to have 20, 30,000 in that car hidden. I may or may not find it, but he's going to have it in there because he doesn't want to get robbed by somebody else when he's at a truck stop, a hotel, whatever, and he doesn't want to take it in the hotel. He thinks he's got a good hidey hole, and that's where he's going to keep it until he gets into Mexico.
Yeah, and we see a lot of going up into Michigan for I guess migrant workers or whatever.
Yeah,
and a lot of them, they'll hide their cash sporadically, like around the car or in their luggage and stuff. And has nothing to do with like them being criminal or avoiding the cops. It's once they get back into Mexico, the criminals down there are going to try to take it and take advantage of them. And so I feel like when we see it we see it more spaced out too. And I feel like maybe that's a way that they can, if they were to get illegally stopped by like an organization, they find some of it, they don't get it all. So yeah, like that's not the money I'm talking. I'm talking about like, you know, heat sealed, rubber banded money that, you know, like that's the stuff. But yeah, it's very common that different cultures, and I mean, a lot of the migrant workers don't have a good relationship with law enforcement in Mexico because of, I guess they're not as professional as they are here. So like they also is that fear of law enforcement, even though we're American, they just correlate it, same uniform across the world, you know? So I think some of that comes into play there too.
And you know, everybody knows the police in Mexico, not all of them are on the up and up. And I've had even a lot of my friends from the United States been stopped by them, and they'll ask them for 100, 200, 500, whatever to go on. And they'll give it just to go on. And so those migrant workers, they've been shaken down so many times that they won't act like they don't have anything. And let that lazy cop go search for it. You know, maybe he won't find it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
you mentioned earlier, Win Rockefeller. Your dad had a relationship with the former governor, correct?
That's correct. My dad was a pilot for Governor Rockefeller from the 60s until 71, I think it was. And when he left in 71, he went to work with a guy named Fred Smith. And you may not have ever heard of this company. It's called Federal Express, FedEx. And they tried to start it in Little Rock, and the city of Little Rock wouldn't give them a tax break, so they moved it to Memphis. And it just so happens that the girl I married, her dad was also one of the original FedEx pilots, and which was just a freak deal. But my dad was head of operations for Fred Smith, and about 2 or 3 years into it, I was an MP in Germany and was working, and the CO called me and said that there had been an accident back home, and my dad was killed in one of the plane crashes here in the United States.
What was the were plane crashes common then, or like more?
No, what happened was he was testing out a pilot, and the pilot, I think, had falsified how many hours or his experience level on the plane. And they were at Chicago's O'Hare Airport, and my dad was letting him fly the plane. And from all the witnesses and stuff, it appeared something went wrong with the plane, but instead of keeping the fire to it, he shut the engines down, and I guess thought it was going to stop, but it didn't, and it went into some houses at the end of the runway.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So your relationship with your father up into that, I mean, did you have a great relationship with your dad? Were you guys close?
Yeah, we were close and stuff. I had wanted to be a state trooper. He wanted me to be a pilot. And my son's a pilot. He flies their jets.
That's
So
awesome.
I was the only one that didn't. And I got it because when Mr. Rockefeller was governor and they go to different states, I would fly with them some. And I'd always ride with the trooper in whatever state it was, Virginia, Michigan, California. And I found, to me, with talking with them and seeing them, I just had a real good impression of law enforcement, and they really were very honest and kind, and they all wanted to make a difference. And while my dad made good money, there was no doubt about that. I knew that the money wasn't everything to me, and I wanted to go in law enforcement. And then when I talked to a teacher in high school, he had told me he had been an MP, and he said, you ought to do that first and then decide whether or not you want to go on with college. The military will pay for it, or become a police officer. And that's exactly what I did. I joined the state police as a dispatcher for a year and 2 months, and then got on as a state trooper. And when I say this, Kenny, we only made $9,000 a year. As a state trooper, you work 6 days a week, 10 hours a day, and you were on call. And it was a hard job back then and stuff. We didn't have portable radios, so if you got on the side of the road and you got in a fight, you run the side of the road in a fight. And that's about it. But we also had where, if someone was a felon driving a car or fleeing from you, you could shoot at them because, Garner didn't come out yet. So back then it was legal to shoot at fleeing felons or people driving stolen cars, things like that. So there was the good and the bad of the old days. I will say that being a state trooper, I really believe was a calling for me. And I probably excelled because I loved it so much. I didn't take a vacation day or anything the first 10 years. I was single. So don't do that if you're married. The first 10 years, I didn't even take a vacation day. And I loved it. And probably would have worked for free after about the third or fourth year once I was addicted to it. I just thought it was a calling, and it was a great job. I loved it.
That's kind of where I was going to. With you talked about Tennessee versus Gardner, but beyond that, I always feel like there was more shootings. I guess more bad guys shooting at cops than ever before. I mean, I feel like there's still a lot, but I feel like back then it was I don't know, it was just more prevalent. Everyone that I talked to that like has 30 plus years in law enforcement or even more, that they seem like there was a lot more like shootings. Like Steve Murphy told me that he couldn't count how many shootings he was, and he was a cop before he was an agent. So I'm like, man, that's crazy.
I think there was too, and you probably go on the lineofduty.com and see that line of duty deaths have been going down. But it's also because we started wearing vests and bulletproof glass in some departments' cars, like Texas DPS, things like that. I wore my vest from day one. My mom bought it for me, $125, a second chance vest. The reason I went with second chance is because Richard Smith, I think was the guy that invented them. He came to Little Rock, Arkansas, took a .357 Magnum, held it upside down, and shot himself in the vest.
Jesus.
Oh yeah, and there's tons of videos out there so you can watch it. But he shot himself in the vest numerous times. Any man that's going to stand behind his product like that, where'd I put my money? You know? And so crazy. I did. And we had several troopers. My FTO was shot and killed by two 16-year-olds about a year after he FTO'd me. And we had the posse comitatus that killed, gosh dang it, the black trooper in Texarkana. Can't remember his name. Not Parker. It'll come to me. Anyway, that was like in the early 80s also. And his wife was the one that drove up on his dead body.
Oh, wow.
Because, she and her son were going to meet him for lunch. He made one traffic stop and stopped a guy named Snell. And Snell was part of the CSA and the Covenant Sword and the Arm of the Lord. and he shot and killed him, left him on the side of the road. And then his wife came up there with the son and tried getting on the police radio and calling for help and stuff. Yep. And then to show you death, while we were doing that funeral, I was in the honor guard standing at the casket of the trooper. God, I feel terrible. Anyway, I was standing at the casket for the service, and the next speaker that came up after the pastor said, "I've got some bad news. 4 DeQueen police officers that were en route to the funeral were hit by a dump truck, and it killed all 4
Unreal.
on the way to the funeral." Yep.
Man, yeah, death is death in this profession is it sucks, and it seems
Yeah.
it seems like it's getting better. I mean, I hope, knock on wood, like anything could change, but it does seem like we're handling that aspect of it, less accidents, less in the line of duty deaths, and it could be the best. I also think it's like the advancements in medical technology and stuff. You
Yeah.
know, people dealing with we're
Tourniquets.
dealing, we're tourniquets. Yeah, tourniquets. We're dealing with more people being shot. We have a better understanding of how the body works and what's important.
It
So
was
hopefully-
Trooper Bryant. Trooper Lewis Bryant was the trooper that was
Glad
killed
you
by
remember that.
Snell. Yep.
I never even heard of CSA.
Oh, we did a raid on their place. You need to Google it. We did a raid on their encampment in north central Arkansas. We sent 100 and some odd troopers, tons of federal agents and stuff. And I'll try and get you some of the pictures. We seized, I'm going to say it was somewhere like around 11 or 1,200 weapons
Wow.
up there. Oh, yeah. They had everything.
What was their?
They
What was,
dated the police. All their shooting ranges had police officers with their hats on and stuff like that. Yeah, they couldn't stand us.
what was their? This anti-government?
Yeah. Hmm.
When you're a cop, so for me, what keeps me motivated is bucket list things. Like I have like there's just this small bucket list thing. So like for me, a bucket list thing. I saw, you know, I don't know. There's a trooper buddy of mine in Ohio, and he caught someone smuggling, and he handed them their handcuffs, and he put them on. So that was a bucket list for me. You know, the bad guy put them on himself. I was like, oh, like I got to keep it fun. I got to keep it entertaining. You know, like so. I see troopers down in Texas that they stop a car, and it's like 3 questions in. They're like, "What's your name? Where do you live? How many kilos you got in the trunk?" And they're like 7,000. I was like, so that was another goal of mine. I was like, oh, I wanted to get someone to admit like what they were carrying. You know, and so that always kept it fun and entertaining for me. A bucket list thing for mine right now, and I don't know if I ever have the opportunity to do this, is I can't fathom people that hurt women and kids. A lot of other crimes I can rationalize; it makes sense, but those 2 just don't make sense to me. And the top of my bucket list is stopping one of those crimes before it's happening, maybe in transit or something along those lines. But you doing it for so long, what were some of the bucket list items that you created, or what kept you motivated to keep going out there and doing it?
I think number one, it was always a challenge. And I liked to contact a lot of the younger adults where I patrolled at in West Little Rock. And I knew that people are creatures of habit. You know that. You can be out there on the interstate at 8 o'clock in the morning. You'll see the same red Camaro go by within 10 minutes of each other. 5 o'clock in the afternoon, if you see 4 vehicles in a row, usually they're going to be there again the next day at 5 o'clock in the morning, or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. I like to sit there and see, once I caught somebody for speeding or whatever it was, illegal tint, if I talked to them for a minute and said, man, get the tint off the windows, or cut those stupid driving lights off, you know, whatever it was, I liked knowing that when I saw them the next time, they'd gotten it right. And I used to call it the do-right lights. When you threw the lights on, the do-right lights, they were supposed to do right, you know? So
Yeah.
I would try and, you know, I like to make an impression on people. And you and I talked about it. I don't ever believe in taking their money and their pride. If I was going to chew your butt, I wasn't going to write you a ticket. That's for sure. And I usually would never say anything in front of someone's kids, woman or man. I would get them out of the car a lot of times. And, you know, as a trooper, we didn't have cages the first 16 years. So they all rode in the right front seat. And even when I had a state police Camaro, I had 2 of them. They only had a little console this big between me and the bad guy being cuffed up. Or when I was talking to him, he's sitting right there.
Yep.
my bucket list was always to try and make a difference. And if people would tell me things that were going on in the community, I would try and target that thug. I called him Joe Shit the Rag Man. And if somebody's telling me somebody's stealing air conditioners off of new houses at night, and they're always driving this truck with a flatbed trailer stealing them, I might stay out late, because with state police, they didn't care what time you went home back then. You could go to work at 2 in the afternoon. If you stayed out till 7 in the morning, they didn't care. And that's what I did. I wanted to catch the people that were doing things so that local people saw, damn, they got him. They got old Mike, stuff like that. And that was one of my goals. I also wanted one day, I don't drink coffee, but I'd always check up on my 7-Elevens and off the freeways and stuff. And I always taught in troop school, don't ever pull in that first driveway. Go past the first one, look at what you see, pull in the second one. Make sure you're seeing what's going on. And I always wanted to catch somebody robbing one of the 7-Elevens. I mean, I really did. And especially back in the day, the olden days, we had the shotgun and the revolver. We didn't have automatics yet. And you jack around that shotgun,
People's
you know,
attention.
yeah, you get people's attention, especially in the early 80s, because we were still shooting at a lot of cars and a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean the evolution
Oh,
where you started with case law alone, and the technology is just it's mind blowing. Just to think in the
it
40
is.
years, like where case law was, and now in technology. And when you first started, did you even have computers in your car?
Oh no, we had a a low band radio and a siren. That's it. And they put 2 or 3 toggle switches through the plastic below the dash. That's all you had. And if you'd have told me when I started in '79, Keith, one day marijuana is going to be legal, I told you, there's no damn way, not in this country. If you'd have told me, and I was one of the first troopers, myself and Kyle Drown, we got the prosecutor to pay for them. The state police didn't have them yet. Kyle and I got the first in-car computers to run license plates through ACIC, but we were using a satellite. We were shooting it off the trunk to a satellite, so
Wow.
we never had a dead spot. Of course, the thing was about this big on the trunk, and people would say, what the hell's that? Didn't matter what they said. Us running license plates when people didn't know we could do it was just unreal. License plate, driver's license, things like that. We were doing those in, I think it was 2000 here. And of course, I'd been to a gang school in California in the mid 90s, right before Rodney King, and they all had that, 20 years before us.
Yeah, it does seem when technology kind of bigger cities, more money, kind of starts there, and then it kind of fans out the rest of the country. But yeah, like LA, Chicago, New York, kind of get almost like test pilots for the stuff. I feel like they probably get it at a cheaper rate and see how successful it is.
I think it's that, plus I went to a pit school out there in California. I think the other side of the coin is there's so many big agencies in California, bumper to bumper to bumper, to where if you get one agency to buy into something, it's like dominoes. They go around. If you do that in Arkansas, Little Rock, then the next big department might be 60 miles away. That's
Yeah.
more than a 10-man department. So, you had all those kind of hurdles to jump too.
We didn't talk about this last time, but were you a trooper when Bill Clinton was there?
Yeah.
How was he the governor?
Yeah, he was the governor. He gave me a Trooper of the Year award, and he gave me a governor's citation.
How was he? So this is kind of before my time. He was the first president that I vividly remember. But
Okay.
how was he as a governor?
We all have our politic
Yeah, I'm not-
part stuff.
yeah, I'm just-
He was
as a
always, he was always good to me. One thing I'll say about Clinton is he could remember every person's name. He could remember my wife's name. He could remember anybody. And here he was as president meeting kings, queens, CEOs. But when my wife showed up at one of the Marine One helicopter site landing zones, hey, Corey, how you doing? He remembers it. When he made president, I had the state police Camaro at the time, and he and I knew each other through working and stuff. I never went to work executive protection or governor security because that's not my gig. I'm not there to carry luggage and protect the governor. I mean, that's never been on my bucket list. And but when he became president, every time he came here, he asked if I was available to escort him wherever we went, to the golf course, to a speaking engagement, whatever. So I got to do that a lot with him and stuff. And I've got lots of pictures of my Camaro with the president, Air Force One, things like that. He was good to me. And I always feel like, if you talk to somebody about Keith Eremea, what do you think about Keith Eremea? That jackass, I can't stand him. There's going to be people tell you that. I promise you.
I doubt
And
it, but
deservingly so, because I can be that. It's not a problem. And sometimes, like I told you the other night, my tongue is a dual-sided knife. It's gotten me a lot of promotions. It's got me a lot of good gigs. It's helped me with my business now that I'm running, but it's also got me in a lot of trouble. And, there's been lots of people in my career told me, hey, be quiet. Don't say that. Don't rock the boat. So I've just got to go on how he treated me. He wasn't great for raises for the state police like some of the other governors have been, but we also had the Cuban refugee thing in, I think it was 80 or 81, where he allowed all the Cuban refugees to come to Fort Chaffee. And then we had the riots where we had to send about 150 troopers, and they ran the fences at the fort, and we fired shots at the Cuban refugees and stuff, and we had troopers get hurt, and lots of patrol cars were damaged by rocks and railroad spikes they took out of the railroad and threw them over the fence at us and the cars and stuff. So he had, a couple things like that, but he treated me good. And so, my version of Bill Clinton is he did me right.
yeah, no, I'm not worried about the politics aspect of it. I was just kind of
Yeah, I get it.
like, how was he as a person, governor? Yeah, no, I think that's
Yeah.
that's pretty
Could he have
commendable
done
that
more? Yeah. Could he have done more for law enforcement? Of course, everybody can.
yeah, that's what I say. Yeah, everyone can. Yeah, but I mean, that's pretty impressive that he remembers your wife's name and stuff. And then
Oh.
that's
He has a mind that remembers almost everything. He'd bring up stuff. Sometime we'd be waiting for his wife to come down for a motorcade, and he might say, "Keith, you remember when you did this? You remember when that happened and stuff?" And I'm like, "Yeah." He remembered.
wow, that's crazy.
He's good.
That's awesome. Well, you kind of got a free chance at this because usually I just hit my guess with it, but my audio sucks, so it's on me. It's my bad. But we end every podcast with one question. We teach for Justice Academy. So, what's your definition of justice?
I think justice means that if someone does another person wrong, that they should pay in some way. I'm not always saying it's going to jail. I'm not saying it's always money. I don't know what it is in each case. I just know that people have to feel like they matter. And if someone got their car broke into or someone got their ATV stolen while they're at work, someone's got to be punished. And that's what I think justice is just letting someone know that if you got violated, if someone pushed you down, if someone did something to you, that there's going to be justice. There's going to be a bill to pay. And not always does it got to be real severe. I learned in troop school that the word enforce just means to compel obedience. It doesn't mean to write a lot of tickets. Doesn't mean to kick their butt. It doesn't mean any of that stuff. It just means to get them to do right. And I think nowadays a lot of policemen forget that. And I think too, a lot of the younger policemen, and I'm not trying to cast a shadow on the young guys or gals, I just think that the art of communication is not there like it was when I was a young trooper. And like I said before, I would walk up to the car, and back then we didn't say we were Trooper Eremea or whatever. You just say good morning, good afternoon. Reason I stopped you, I clocked you running 88 in a 55 zone, needs your driver's license. I didn't ask him for the registration and insurance. I personally never did that as a sergeant, a lieutenant, or a captain. I don't want them looking for all that stuff. I want them to give me one thing, that driver's license. I can run everything else back in the car, or I can get them out with me, bring them back, and go, wait a minute, I need to go ask your wife or girlfriend for the registration or the insurance card. That gives me a reason to go back up there. And one time, 69-year-old man, I get him out. He's driving an Avalanche that had those little compartments in the back that you could cover. I said, where you going? He goes, oh, we're going to the NBA playoffs in Atlanta. I said, good deal. Talked to him for a minute. Body language was way off. When I told him I was going to give him a warning ticket, he didn't go, okay, man, thanks, Didn't do that. So I walk up to his wife and I said, hey, I need to get the registration and insurance. Okay. And I said, so you're going to Disney World? And she goes, yeah, we sure are. 690 pounds of marijuana in the back of his Avalanche. And he was 69 years old on oxygen.
Wow.
So I just think, there's people out here like me and you that would tell me, Keith, Kenny Williams is selling drugs to the kids at the high school. Well, I'm going to tell you something. That kind of puts you on my radar. And if it's important to them, it's important to me. And I want them to know, hey, I'm going to get them. When they told me that somebody was stealing brand new air conditioners off the backs of brand new houses, I stayed out till 1 or 2 in the morning. Sure enough, that truck showed up and he had 3 or 4 3-ton air conditioners on the back of his truck. And I got him. And it made people think, hey, he thought he was getting by, but he's not anymore. That's what justice is to me. That the good people know that we're on that team and we're going to do everything we can to win.
Yeah, no, I like it. I'm a big compliance person too. I guess the way that like when it comes to traffic, but yeah, I also want to have an impact and have society feel that if they've been wronged, that there's someone there that's going to try to make it right to the best of their ability.
Yeah, and Kenny, I'll say this: I can get on my Facebook page, and there's times every year 4 or 5 other people are telling me, hey, my brother passed away. I used to stop him all the time. I just want to say thanks for, catching him with the drugs or with the alcohol, whatever. I've got 2 or 3 friends on my Facebook page. One of the girls I sent to prison and caught her with, I think it was 8 pounds of methamphetamine coming back on Interstate 40. She came to state police headquarters the day she got out of prison back in about 2018. And she said, I just want to tell you thank you because the other girl and the boy you got, and I've still got the picture of all 3 of them sitting cuffed by the car. She said, one of them didn't go to prison. He was on the run, got killed. The other girl went to prison and stuff, and she overdosed in prison. And she's dead. And knowing that one person gets through and stuff, like I've told you before, I only got what God wanted me to get. He gave me these eyes to watch the violation, to look for the tooling, to watch the body language, to watch their breathing. He gave me the nose to smell the marijuana or to smell the Bondo underneath the trunk or wherever it may be. He gave me the ears to hear, you're lying to me. I promise you that every load I got, there was sometimes even the $700,000 money seizure I'd gotten a brand new toy that was called a radar detector that this company sent me, and you put on your dash, leave your radar off, and it would tell you if somebody was coming at you with a radar. And so you wait to the last second, bam, hit them real quick. Oh, good deal. Well, I catch a bus come by with a radar detector. It's illegal in a commercial motor vehicle. So I get him pulled over for that. That's all I got him for. I'd gotten the tool 2 days before. It's not me.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah. I know you give all the thanks to God, and I'm
got to.
Yeah, no, I'm a right place, right time. I don't know what for me. Yeah, like I'm there for a reason. I feel a lot of things are the right place, the right time for a reason.
And with you, Kenny, and like I said, it's a breath of fresh air for me. And you know that I sent you a text message from a captain over in Oklahoma the other day that knew of you and stuff, and I told him some stuff, and he was very, very impressed. You've got a great work ethic, and I think that God probably uses you a lot, not only in stopping the drugs, getting from one side of the country to the other, saving lives, saving families' misery, because we all know what addiction causes for the whole family. Stopping that, but also your ability to teach and your gift to talk and instruct. Interdiction may be here for you, and it's high. Trust me, I'm not, it's here. But I think your instruction and all the other stuff you're doing is probably, it's exceeding, I know it is, exceeding the amount of drugs you catch and what you're doing there. I know it is.
I don't know how to take compliments well, so but I'm
I'm
grateful
just,
for that. No, yeah, I'm
I
grateful
watched
that.
I watched the class leave out the other day. They didn't know who I was, and they were all talking, and they had that "let's go, let's get them," stuff. And for someone like me, that's a breath of fresh air. It makes me know that our team has still got a chance. It's like football. I'm not a big football player, watch it that much, but when the team is doing good, it makes your heart feel good and you take pride in it. And those kids all came out. I call them kids because they're young, not derogatory. They all came out, the men and the women. Oh man, I let one go. I did this. He hit a nail. I got to do this. It was so refreshing to watch people that wanted to go to work and wanted to catch the bad guy. Use the communication skill. And I don't care, like I told you before, if you've got to sit there and tell somebody, you don't want to go, you haul marijuana? You got marijuana in the car. No. Walk up to it. If if you think you see something or smell something, go, well, correct me if I'm wrong, but I smell marijuana. It's hard for someone to look at a cop and go, you're wrong.
Yeah.
They're not going to do that. I promise you. I've never had somebody say that to me. If I said, I think you got marijuana. No, I don't. That's one thing. But when you say, correct me if I'm wrong, but I smell marijuana, it's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard.
I am grateful for all those nice things that you said about me. But again,
It's the truth.
it's not me. It's a lot of people that led a great foundation for me. I had great FTOs. I had great ambassadors when I got an interdiction, like Ben Pyatt and those guys. And
Ben.
yeah, I love Ben. I love me some Ben. But yeah, like if I didn't have those people that I can learn the right way of even interdiction, let alone the speaking and passing the knowledge, like Strong Smart and just amazing people that kind of gave me these opportunities, and that's all I'm trying to do. I love interdiction to my core. I think it's the best gig in law enforcement, and my fear is that it's going to go away, and just with helping young officers communicate and having conversations, I think interdiction will stay around, and that's my biggest focus with it, man. If I can just teach cops how to communicate and be better listeners than speakers, I think that it's a win for the profession.
I agree, but police officers need to nowadays not be afraid to accuse somebody of something. They need to not be afraid of lying to suspects. If you sit there and tell them, hey, she said you got drugs, and the guy goes, no, I don't. That's what she said. You can do that. You can play these people. You can sit there and communicate and act like you don't know anything. Let them give you consent and then go with it. Have fun. And don't tear up the cars. That's another one of my peeves. I couldn't stand to stop a car from Texas or Oklahoma or wherever it may be. And those are all good states. I love them. But then you find the doggone trunk. They've popped ribs are all hanging loose and the back's all. Don't do that. Don't do it. If you don't know how to do it, don't do it.
Yeah, and it's easy. I mean, if the pop roots are there, I mean, the way I look at a car, the first layer of the car is all pops off and pops back on. So don't like there's ways that you can clear it without popping everything off too. Like you don't need you don't need it. Yeah, you break stuff, like just be honest. Like if I break something, I tell them right away, like, hey, you know what? I broke this. This is my card. This is my boss's name. If you want us to replace it, just reach out to us. I'll and then I'll put in my call for service, my traffic stop. What happened? I'm not trying to hide it from you. Like I don't want you to leave here if I searched the car and there was nothing, or something minor and it was whatever. But like I don't want you to leave here and think that all cops are jerks. Like I want to build a better relationship with society. So just be upfront and honest. It's not a big deal. I mean, things happen. It's not intentional.
You got to remember one thing. All these people you're stopping, they're going to be on a jury somewhere.
Yep.
And when you fly around them or they see you go to the donut shop or whatever it may be, you may think, okay, I'm Billy Badass with this police car and I can go flying down the interstate or wherever, just remember they're going to be on a jury somewhere. And I've been on 2 different lawsuits with juries, and I'm telling you, it can go either way sometimes. So be professional and make sure that you leave people with a good taste in their mouth. I don't care if they are Joe Shit the Rag Man. You know, God will make sure somebody else gets them.
Yeah, I mean, we still have a job to do, but you can still do it in a respectful way, and I think people
Yep.
appreciate that either way. Even if they're
Yep.
the criminal, and you're like, man, you know, I've been arrested 30 times, but
Yeah.
you taught me, you know, you showed me more respect than anyone else. I'm like, I take that as a compliment. You know,
I
you
do
can
too.
accomplish the same thing without being a dick.
That's right. I
Well,
agree.
thank you. I appreciate it again. I could talk
Hey,
to you all
my
night.
pleasure. My pleasure. And please
Awesome.
be safe out there, Kenny.
You too. It's been great.
Okay. Bye.